Okay, in this lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about the date stamps that our text goes over, and a couple things that I'd like to reinforce, especially on how to format dates. So I'm going into my contact table, and I'm doing this because a lot of us did the homework, and we can deal with, the time. So in this case, I have first name, last name, email, telephone, comments, same form that I gave out. And I'm going to go ahead and add one column to the end. And I'm going to call this time of submission. I know it's a little bit lengthy, but I want to show you the options that we have. Now there's date time, timestamp, time, and year. So of these five, the one that's most specific is the date and time combination because it has minutes and seconds. The date itself would be the day. The timestamp is going to be the number of seconds since the Unix epoch, so it's going to be one number of just seconds, which is tough to format. The time itself is going to be a time range like this, so it's basically about the time without the date, and the year is just a 4-digit year. So date time is usually the one we want because it has the most information. So anyway, what I'd like to show you is how on the database side it can work. So I'm going to go ahead and insert into contact, and we're going to grab our first name, our last name, our email, I think that's what it is, telephone, comments, the following values, which is going to be, John, client, and the email can be jclient@gmail.com, something like that. But this lesson is really about time. So I'm going to do 555-1212 for the phone, and I'd like to hire you. I'll do it without the apostrophe. Like to hire you. Exclamation point. So that's our insert statement here. But notice how we didn't do the time of submission. So time of submission is date time. And what's cool about this is I can use the keyword now. And I'm using it with parentheses here. I'm going to copy and paste my query and run it. So when I do this and click go, I get one row inserted. But look at the browse. By doing now, I actually get the timestamp, which is really neat. So that is a very specific way to do things, and it doesn't cost too much to do and processing wise, and the fact is I know when John Client signed up, so that's a good thing. Now how to format this. Now there is something called date format in W3 schools is a good way to do it, and you'll see that whatever the date format is, this you can have a letter character around it. And the letter characters, actually, I'm not a big fan of W3 schools, but this kind of shows how you can format it. So let me show you an example. We're going to go and select the time of submission. So this is select, and it's going to be date format, and it's going to be time of submission, and I'll do something like percent month, percent day, percent year. So I'm formatting my date from contact, and I'll just use the client ID where the ID equals 3 because I think that's what we had when we did it. So I'm going to go click go on this. Oh yeah, and I have to add a single quote there, and hopefully we get our value. And look, it did format perfectly. So let's say we wanted to do the hours, minutes, and seconds. I could do this and add another comma and then do percent %H, percent %I, percent %S, and this is from memory, but you'll see that, yes, here's 130. So that's a little bit about SQL date formatting. Now let me shift a little bit into PHP, because if you use date time and date format each time, your SQL stress is over. I will show you briefly how PHP kind of deals with this. I'm going to create a new file right here. It's going to be called time.php. And what we're going to do is edit this. And up at the top here, PHP has numerous actually, date and time functions. But I'll show you the two biggest ones that can really save your life. One is called time. Okay, and if I were just to echo time right now and upload it, we can go ahead and see that when we do time.php, we can see that we have this character. Now there's also something called mktime, which is going to be the same value. You see that the seconds actually increased since the last time I went there. But whatever the time is, it's not important because it only matters when we can format it so the user can see it. So you'll see some people actually store this value into a database. I prefer doing the date time because it's more specific, and when you back up your database, it's a little easier to get a recognition of how things are happening. We can still order by time when we format. It's not there's no dependence on the string. So to format this, all I have to do is add the date function. And if you recall, the last thing I did when I date formatted in the database was use MD and Y, and I can do hours, minutes, and seconds as well. And the second part of this is going to be the mark. So when I do this and I echo out the value, watch what happens. I get, hopefully I get it. There we go. April 16th, 8:34:31. So that's the hours and minutes and seconds, and you'll see that's actually the value of the Greenwich Mean Time, because the server is based on that. So we can actually reverse the timestamp with the set date, which the author in the textbook uses in his code. But those are the two biggest things. So I would say, as a beginner, make sure you focus on date format for the database and using date time as a field type. And then in this case, this is how PHP can do it without the database. If you convert to mktime and then format it this way, it'll look good. All right, any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.